So, ladies and gentlemen, we're nearing the 23rd anniversary of one of the most strangest, successful Canadian sports events in our nation's history. Now, for you Americans listening to this feed, we can say like 23 years ago, Michael Johnson is a chicken. If you don't know who Michael Johnson is, well, maybe you should read up about your American quitter. We're going to talk today about the infamous Donovan Bailey Michael Johnson 150-meter match race that was held in Toronto Sky Dome on again June 1st, 1997. Now, this was to settle the dispute regarding who was the world's fastest man. It was not sanctioned by the IAAF, and it included Bailey, our Canadian champion, who won the 100 meters, breaking the world record at a 96 Olympics in Atlanta, and the 1996 Olympic 200-meter champion and 400-meter champion, Michael Johnson, who hailed from the States. Now, in years previous, the unofficial title of world fastest man went to the 100-meter champion. But because in 96 the Americans really fucked up in the 100-meter final, no Americans in the medals. NBC Olympics asshole Bob Costin, he's an asshole. He pointed out that Johnson's gold medal performance in a world record of 1932 was faster than Bailey's 100-meter performance, a world record of 1984, because his estimation 1932 divided by 2 was 9.66. Bailey later dismissed Costin's comment as a person who knew nothing about track and field, talking about it with a lot of people listening. And these comments touched a nerve. Because when Bailey won the gold medal in the 100, he didn't stay with the world champion and the Olympic champion. He went to another sporting event. When we bet the Americans in a 4x100-meter relay after they were disqualified, you see, Bailey defeated probably one of the strongest fields in any Olympic final. And he was avenging the Ben Johnson debacle in '88, where Ben went on steroids and bet Carl Lewis at his own game, because Carl Lewis was on steroids. We all know that. But the problem was under the American media, and because it's NBC was very jingoistic when it came in the Olympics. They never thought that a Canadian would come back 8 years after that humiliation and run clean and win the Olympics, and it didn't fit in their description. Now, why a lot of people thought the 100-meter racer was the fastest in the world is because with the flat start of 100 meters, it takes time to accelerate. Of course, a fast 100-meter runner could be just as fast within the 200. We look like you look at Usain Bolt. We look at the old Percy Williams, our 100 and 200-meter champion back in the Depression era. No disregarding Michael Johnson's effort, a great runner, but Michael Johnson obviously was on steroids because you look at him, he looked like in certain pictures a shorter version of Ben Johnson. Donovan Bailey was an awkward runner, a tall runner, like Usain Bolt, and like Usain Bolt, he had a hard start in the part of his career, and at the end, you saw his basically times go down because, like Bailey, he ran on his heels. Now, when the controversy occurred, a lot of people believed that Canada was 2 years away from or 1 year away from winning the referendum. We had Bret Hart and WWF, the feud against the Americans that was building up. There was a lot of American-Canadian anti-American sentiment going across Canada because of the Olympics again, because of the screw job that was going to happen very soon after that. We felt that Canada was basically being not taken seriously on the world stage because we're having more success at the Olympics. You look at Lennox Lewis as well winning the gold medal for Canada. You look at the basic, improvements in the Winter Olympics. We were improving all our records because there's short track and curling and all that. So there was ideas that was bandied about what happen if we can make some money off this, where Bailey could take on Michael Johnson in a match race at 150 meters. Now, the Canadians started the campaign saying that, why you're mentioning Johnson as the world fastest man, Bailey is the guy. And it escalated as well when I guess Donovan Bailey and Michael Johnson had a verbal sparring match international event in Berlin a few months after. Now, over the fall and winter of 96, 97, several offers were made to stage a 150-meter match event. Some people said it should be held in England. Some people thought it'd be maybe held in Qatar or something. There was a 7-month lead up to the event, and it was decided after a bunch of media back and forth, with Sports Illustrated taking up for Johnson and everybody else in the world taking up for Donovan Bailey. What really started a problem overall was the lack of respect for track and field at that time. We had a lot of steroids, convictions being 88 in 96. Mark McCoy, our own 110-meter hurdler, future champion, was caught as well, our Canadian ones. Anyway, after numerous verbal barbs, and with an undercard that had actually, it was a dual meet with a pole vault duel between the great Sergei Bubka and Orkata Blitz, and also a long job competition between Jack and Kersey and Heike Drexler. So the undercard was quite good. It was like a boxing match, but it was going to be a made-for-TV 150-meter race, a pay-per-view on a curved 70-meter curved track and a 70-meter straight configuration that was basically unheard of before then. According to reports, $1.5 million of money was offered to each of the runners, almost like a winner take all. And the cash was unbelievable. Some people say Bailey got $1 million. Some people say more. Some people say Johnson received 500,000. Some people say less. But as the estimates is between. So there was talk that it was $2 million in total, but all depends who you're talking to. Now this was broadcast throughout the world, mostly on CBC and major networks in the States. But when this entered, you got to understand, Skydome is a big, noisy field. 30,000 spectators showed up. And it lived up the expectations for what they figured Donovan Bailey did. But when the race was held, Bailey said in published reports afterwards he knew that Johnson wasn't ready to go. And we saw that in the final because Bailey took a slight lead, and Johnson, who was losing the race at the time, pulled up at a 100-meter mark, allegedly injured his quadriceps, and grabbed him and slowed to a stop before squatting on the track in distress. Now, according to CBC cameras, Bailey looked back at Johnson and waited for him to come on, believing he simply quit the race. He won the race in 14 seconds, .99, which is 1 second per 10 meters. So it was comparable to a typical 20-second 200. But when Bailey met with reporters, even though his agent said, after the race, don't go over the top. If you look at the video, this is an exact transcript of what was said. There was never any doubt in my mind that I was the fastest man on the planet, and this just proved it. He said I couldn't run a corner, but I always said this is exposing Michael Johnson and the weaknesses in his race. This is just preparation. We're going to run a couple of 200 meters this year, and I plan on being him in his event. He didn't pull up. He didn't pull up at all. He's just a chicken. He's afraid to lose. I think what he should do, we should run this race once again so I can kick his ass one more time. The bottom line was I had to concentrate on what it was given. I support events like this. I just think the organizers should have some knowledge of track and field and respect us as athletes. It was a farce in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, it was a topper of the cake from 96. But he said this on CBC. If he would have said this on NBC Live, can you imagine? Like, a lot of people believe he lost heavy amounts of endorsements because no American wants to be said in a race that he dominated, the 200 was dominated by Americans, that their champion is a chicken. CBS actually interviewed Johnson before they interviewed Donovan Bailey, and he said, I just pulled the quad. Asked to comment claims that are now sure to follow, but he's clearly proven that Bailey's the world's fastest man. Johnson responded, even if I had won it, and I feel very confident that I could have, some people would have said that. Everyone is always entitled to their opinion. You know, I can't do anything about that. So, I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. If a Grammy for Best Pop Song goes to Justin Bieber, and he's up against Tony Bennett, and Tony Bennett said, well, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. It should be what modern pop should get the award, not Tony Bennett, which he's given awards. That's the only comparison. If you're a pop fan or a sprint fan, your race is the 100. It's not the 200. Nobody gets, Italian food endorsements or phone companies from Qatar plug in the 200-meter fan. The only reason why Usain Bolt got all those ads because you won the 100. The 100 is a marquee race. The heavyweights were the tops of the boxing division. The welterweights tried to take over for a while because you had the big four: Duran, Hearns, Hagler, and Leonard. But the heavyweights, you had Ali, you had Holmes, you had Norton, who were the top of the echelon. Now, Bailey was very aggressive about the victory for quite some time, and it's marked about a very, not say bad feeling in the mouth. The IAAF there, they were trying to dominate everything at the time more than they're trying to dominate now because of COVID. Uh, and the president basically said, this is not sports as entertainment, but more like something out of a circus. Primo Nibalo didn't really like what was going on. But most Canadians, when they saw Donovan Bailey, our Olympic champion, avenge what happened to Ben Johnson, who some people think he was spiked, he was doing steroids, but he's still spiked, to an American. But you can't take the sit up. Was Vince McMahon looking at that and got the idea from the screw job for that? It's kind of a retribution because that's what was working in the mid 1990s. Canadian patriotism was huge because we killed the separatists in Quebec by less than 1%. And the Olympics were great. One of the best Olympics. I remember that like yesterday. Don Whitman on the call. Don Whitman was a great track and field. There was nothing more Canadian than us winning Atlanta. Atlanta, like our racer said, gun be off, race be over. So for any Americans listening to the podcast, too bad you lost. If Johnson was better than Bailey, he would have proved it somehow. And their careers never really, went down or went up afterwards. Johnson, because of the injury, couldn't go to the World Championship. It happens, but he was allowed to compete, and they changed the rules that the defending champion could get a bye to go in. But Johnson decided to not compete in the 200 meters, but he won the 400. He was always great at the 400. Now, but this was the era right after Bailey. He was starting to get slower, and Morris Green, who was on steroids as well, started to beat Bailey on a regular basis. And, it was too bad. But like I said, for the time, it was a great demonstration of Canadian know-how. We outsmarted the Americans at our own game, but Bailey got paid well for it, and he's still getting paid in endorsements and working for CBC and all that. But it's like this. He could have made tens of $millions in the States, if he would have kissed her arse. But he made, he kept his kind of personality and, made 40% of what he would have made in the States if he would kissed everybody's arse. So for me, like I said, he made the right choice. But all I know when I look when I watch it with Race Live, and when Bailey was looking back at Johnson quitting, I said he's going to lose it with CBC, and he lost it. And I wasn't sad that sometimes you got to kick somebody's ass. You fuck with me, and you're going to get the fist, as we say in North Shore. Anyway, so on this COVID Thursday, heat wave coming through New Brunswick. Good luck with the people in Hamilton. We're in a cluster right now, cluster fuck, as we like to say, with the COVID. Just remember, wash your hands. And if you are from the North Shore, listen to this podcast. And if you came in contact with anybody came in contact with came in contact, go get tested. Please go get tested. Because a negative is better to know than a positive and not knowing. If that makes any sense. Anyway, have a good day. Bye.